Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum. My name is Joe Lopez, and I have the honor of serving as President and CEO of the Richard Nixon Foundation. It's great to have you here tonight for what is sure to be a very compelling and thought-provoking discussion. Here at the Nixon Foundation, we are dedicated to bringing people together around big ideas. Ideas that challenge us, inspire us, and drive us towards solutions. That's what President Nixon believed in. Bold thinking, fearless leadership, and we at the Nixon Foundation carry that spirit forward in everything that we do. Tonight, we're honored to host someone who embodies that same spirit, Steve Hilton. Steve's story is inspiring. He was born in the UK to Hungarian parents who had fled communist oppression. He studied at Oxford, served at the highest levels of the British government as head of strategy for Prime Minister David Cameron, and then made his way, like so many others, to our great land of California. Steve has made a tremendous impact since coming to the United States. You know him well from his must-see commentary on Fox News. He recently founded Golden Together, a policy organization focused on restoring the California dream, and he is a new American citizen. In his new book, Califailure, Reversing the Ruin of America's Worst-Run State, Steve takes a hard look at what's gone wrong, from homelessness and crime to schools that aren't working and an economy that's leaving too many people behind. This book is not just about the problems, though, it's about the possibilities. It's about what it's going to take to restore California to a beacon of opportunity, innovation, and freedom. So Steve, please tell us, what will it take to save California? Join me in welcoming Steve Hilton.
Thank you very much, everyone. What a great crowd, an amazing room. I feel like being here, I should do the Nixon victory thing, but I don't think, should I do that? Like that. Because we're going to have victory in California for common sense. We're going to save this beautiful state that we love so much, aren't we? Yeah. Exactly. It's going to be victory. I thumped the table to prove it. It's quite loud. Sorry about that. Well, it's so amazing to be here. It really is. I was just saying, our friends here at the Nixon Library have done such an incredible job with this amazing institution, must get sick of the comparisons with the Reagan Library. But I have to say, I was there last night, and I just find this to be a very special place. I said to some of you earlier, what an incredible honor it is for me to be here, and actually to have these two events back to back like this, and a reminder of what an incredible country this is. As you heard, I stand before you now, despite the accent, sorry about that, I'm working on it. Not that hard. People seem to think, you know, it's kind of helpful. They think you're clever. I don't think that's, I don't believe it. That I am standing in front of you now as a proud American. Our flag. And the thing I want to say, just being so mindful of the greatness that's honored in this building and this institution, this great country, there's no other country on earth where someone like me could show up and, first of all, on a very basic level, become an American in the deep and full sense. You could move to the UK. You could even change your accent. Tony, you could speak with a British accent. How about that? Well, should we try it? No, okay. I can't see it somehow. You could do the accent. You could become a citizen of the UK, but you'll never be British. As you heard, I'm My parents are Hungarian. You try going to Hungary and telling them that you're Hungarian. Not a chance. How about China? Not that anyone would want to move to China these days, but still, there's no way. It's only America. It's unique. It's unique. That idea of being an American, it's only this country that allows anyone to come here and buy into what we all revere and treasure about this country and become as much a part of it as anyone else. I'm so unbelievably honored and proud and grateful for that opportunity. And also for the opportunity to be here in California, because I'm not just a proud American, I'm a proud Californian, despite everything, despite however hard they're trying to make us leave. We're not leaving, right? Why should we leave? We're not the ones that did this to our beautiful state. We didn't create Califailure. They did. They're the ones that need to leave. They need to leave office, and we're the people that are going to make it happen. And by the way, to the point about, well, how are we going to save California? That's basically the answer. And before I get into some of the arguments in this book, and then I'm really looking forward to the time to have some conversation with you and some questions, I do want to say one thing. It's great to be here. I've had wonderful events up and down the state. I was in New York last week. Many of you may have seen me on Fox News talking about the book and on podcasts. I did Adam Carolla's show yesterday. Anyone listen to his show? Fantastic. That was great, exactly. Although the highlight for Adam was nothing to do with this book, was the fact that I was able to tell him on the show how to make chicken paprikash. Yes, which he's obsessed with, and I really know how to make it. Anyway, you didn't come here for a cooking lesson. The thing is that traveling across the country, I was in Austin, Texas on Sunday, Dallas on Monday. The thing that's so interesting to me is that actually everywhere in the country, I know that it's fashionable to laugh at California now and mock how far we've fallen, but everyone loves California. They don't want us to fail, actually. Everywhere I go, it's like, please save California. We need California to be successful. We cannot have Califailure go on for much longer. I hear that everywhere. And so it is our responsibility, I think, to understand what's gone wrong and to try and do something about it. And that's really the purpose of this book, was to tell the story of how we got here, because it's not enough just to say, well, you know, it's the Democrats. By the way, if you don't believe how far things have gone wrong, if you don't believe the premise of this book, I'll just remind you, by the way, as I look at it now, I think I now understand why the one place that didn't want me to appear this week to talk about this book, or last week, can you guess? Gavin Newsom's new podcast. He didn't want to talk to me. I can't understand why. He'll have everyone else, it seems. Apparently, he doesn't want to discuss whether I'm just reading it now, reversing the ruin of America's worst-run state. Yeah, he doesn't want to talk about that. But actually, what's so interesting is if you look at the details, and it's on the back cover, we can all read it together. We can have like in the library. Let's read along together. Because it's very simple. Highest poverty rate, highest unemployment rate, worst homelessness crisis, highest housing costs, lowest home ownership, highest taxes, highest electricity prices, gas, worst business climate, lowest job growth, lowest income growth. That's just a partial list. You're going to have to read the whole book. But the point is, it's a failure on every front. And you know, this is not a partisan point. If you actually want to understand how bad things are, guess who's also talking about what a total failure it all is right now? Democrats. Have you seen them? When they're out, every day now there seems to be a new one popping out saying they're running for governor. We had one yesterday. Javier Becerra. Right, yeah, exactly. By the way, I've noticed, I'm going to do a little experiment here. You'll see it unfold during the evening. I'm calling it the groan meter. When I mention the name of someone and like how loud and enduring the groans are. Becerra, yeah, I'm not kind of mild actually. We'll have some beauties later, as the president might say. So Becerra makes this, it's absolutely astonishing. He announces that he's running for governor. Why? Because the California dream has been destroyed, and we have to do something about the absolutely appalling cost of living. I said, yeah, well, who destroyed it? Who destroyed it? Why is the cost of living so high? Because of you. You think you're the ones to clean it up, the people who made the mess. All of them now. Katie Porter. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. So Katie Porter, I don't know if we're going to beat that, actually. Very interesting. So Katie Porter, that's the same. Like housing, impossible. You know, I'm a busy mom and everything's so expensive and it's a nightmare trying to run a family. Yeah, it is. We know. You did it to us. Thank you very much. You and your stupid policies. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the nerve of it. Even Gavin Newsom, he was on the... Yeah, I went too quickly. I went too quickly. So Gavin Newsom, you can have another go. Gavin Newsom. It's like pantomime, isn't it? Very good. So Gavin Newsom, on his podcast, another episode was with Ezra Klein. He's actually written, he's from the New York Times, Democrat. He's written a book called Abundance. It's a good book. I haven't actually read the book. It's a good argument. I agree with it. We need to move away from what we've got now, which is no to everything. You can't build anything. You can't do anything. We need to have abundance in everything. I totally agree. Half the policy papers, you mentioned Golden Together, my policy organization. You go to goldentogether.com, you'll see all our policy papers on the different issues. Half of them are called abundance, energy abundance, water abundance, etc. Totally agree. And then we need to build and do things and just, make things happen and rediscover that energy and ambition and startup hustle that California is all about. And you have Gavin Newsom on this podcast agreeing that it's so terrible, and Ezra Klein saying, well, it's, you got the regulations and the environmental regulations, it's a nightmare, you can't build anything, you can't do anything, and Gavin Newsom sitting there, yes, that's terrible. And then he says, yeah, that's on us, like some great admission, so big of him to say that. No, it's not on us. Who's this us? It's on you, Gavin Newsom. You're the one that's been in charge for 6 years. It's not on us. It's on you. What have you done about it? And the truth is that they can't do anything about it because they got us into this mess in the first place. And now I do want to dive into what the book is all about, because actually the cause of this, the reason that it is this failure on every front, you've got two things coming together, and that's what I outline in the book. First, it's the combination of one-party rule and really bad ideas. And a lot of times people say, especially in the wake of the fires and all of that, and shall I go for it? Karen Bass? The sheer incompetence, right? And so it's incompetence. It's actually, it's not just the incompetence. I'll get to that in a second because it's a chapter in this book. I mean, incompetence on its own, in a way, sometimes I think, considering how bad their ideas are, thank goodness they are incompetent. Imagine if they were competent, how much worse it would be implementing their terrible ideas. So it's a combination of the one-party rule and the bad ideas. And I lay that out. And just very quickly, it's important to understand how we got to the one-party rule, because otherwise we won't be able to deal with it. There's a couple of things that are really important to understand. Number one is that they have, over the years, the people who've caused Califailure, they have developed, and I'm sorry, I asked earlier, is it okay to be somewhat partisan in this august setting? I think I've already blown through that, right? But who else are you going to blame? They've been in charge. There's nowhere else to look. And the people, that's the Democrats, they've built this machine that has produced this one-party rule. And at the heart of it is something that started happening. Actually, I can say this at the Nixon library. Wasn't really appropriate to say it at the Reagan library, but it really started when Ronald Reagan was governor of California and granted collective bargaining rights to some government unions, starting with the police and firefighters, and that was the first step towards building this incredibly powerful union machine, government union machine, which has now ended up, I mean, over the years, Jerry Brown gave collective bargaining rights. Yeah, okay, I don't know. He's better than most of them, I'm telling you. He gave the first time around when he was governor, collective bargaining rights to, it was extended to all state employees eventually, and local employees and teachers. And why is that important? If you think about it in the context of a company and the management of a company, the management of a company who are they responsible to? They're responsible to the shareholders for delivering results. And if they don't deliver the results, they get changed. And that's how it works. And that's how we end up with progress and success and better outcomes and great new products and services that delight customers. That's the model. That's business. That's capitalism. That accountability. And when you think about that in the context of the government, you would want the politicians, people who are running things, well, who should they be accountable to? Obviously, us, the voters, the people. That's who they're supposed to deliver. We are the customers. But they're not responsible to the customers when you have government unions that have been given collective bargaining rights, which means that they can work as an entity and collect dues from their members. And then what do they do with those dues? They fund the politicians. They elect them. And as you'll see from this book, it's a huge amount of money. Right now in California, just California, $1 billion a year. $1 billion with a B. The government unions funding the Democrat politicians who then they'd have to negotiate with. It's ridiculous. And that's really, and they've built this machine to win elections. And I tell you how bad it's got, the one-party rule. There's a story in here that just shows you the arrogance of one-party rule. Actually, you'll know this, Tony, and others. In Orange County, was it this cycle, wasn't it? The unions funded the campaign of a Republican. A Republican. Not because they agree with the Republican. Why? Because the Democrat in the race had the temerity to disagree with the union on one of their policy demands. So they said, right, we'll show you. We're going to take you out as a warning to any other Democrat not to step out of line. And they're so arrogant because they got this supermajority in the legislature. They don't care if they elect a Republican. What difference will it make? We still have a supermajority, but we've taught every other Democrat legislator, if you step out of line, we'll take you out. That's what we're dealing with here. It's a really, really serious factor in everything going so wrong. Because the politicians are not interested in solving the problems of people that elect them. They're interested in delivering the outcomes for the people who really control them, which is the unions. And you could add on to that the other major donor block for the Democratic Party, and that's the lawyers, the trial lawyers, which is why we end up with the most overtaxed, overgoverned, overregulated, overlitigated state in America. Because the people in charge are actually the unions and the lawyers. Not a good combination. And what happens when you have a one-party rule like this? The kind of people that it throws up. I'm going to go back to Karen Bass. Yeah. I'm going to go back to Karen Bass. Because this... Okay, I've got to stop now. The clock's ticking. I can't do too much. So the thing is that... So I saw this video the other day. This really captures it. So you look, hear me out. This may seem like a small thing, but it really illustrates a big thing. And it really struck me, actually. This I saw after finishing the book, so it's not in the book. She put out a tweet, a post on X, and what she wrote, or her aides or whoever, was, I have just signed an executive order to streamline permitting for rebuilding in LA. This was last week. And I thought, okay, great, fine, I'll take it. 4 months too late, but whatever. But then I thought, I'll just watch, because the post came above a video of herself at the press conference announcing this. So I thought, oh, I'll watch the video, do my research, as they say. Do my own research. So I watched the video. This is what she actually said. So remember, the Post says, I just signed an executive order streamlining. Here's what she actually said. Today I can announce I've signed an executive order tasking agency heads with developing paths forward to streamlining. Like, excuse me, I mean, I'm not going to curse in this august setting, but what the F is that? Seriously. And it sounds like a small thing, but it's a huge thing, because this is how they think. This is what they think is action. Tasking some group of agencies and a committee to develop paths forward. This is why nothing gets done. This is why it's impossible to do anything in California. This is what we've been dealing with. This is what you get from one-party rule. You get people with that kind of bureaucratic mindset whose only skill, basically, is navigating the political machine. That's what they're good at. Buying off the different constituencies, sucking up to the unions, whoever it may be, with no clue how to actually get anything done. That's why we're in this mess. That's why the one-party rule is so important. And then you combine it with these terrible ideas, the ideology. That's what I go through in the first part of this book, the ideologies that we've been dealing with. Because it is ideological. I was just talking to the Orange County Register. I said, well, what's the real problem? I said, everything's got so ideological. These people in power, you just can tell by the way they speak when they talk about what they're doing. They're not waking up every morning thinking, well, how do I help my constituents? How do I help solve this problem? How do I get more housing, but whatever? You know, because they tell us, this is how they speak, that they're going to work in Sacramento, wherever it is, to advance some ideological agenda, to advance our equity goals, or to maintain our leadership on climate action. This is how they talk. It's ideological. It's not practical. And it's extreme, and that's why I wanted to explain it, because it's not just that they're Democrats or whatever. We have Democrats in other parts of the country. It's not as bad as this. The utter calamity of one-party rule in California needs separate investigation. And I tried to really understand what it was. Because this ideology, that in a way, I mean, I use this analogy in the book, because it hasn't just stayed in California, of course. So many of the bad things that have infected the rest of the country started here. The climate extremism, the Green New Deal, and the race and gender extremism, and all these things started here in California. Ballot harvesting, banning gas cars, all these things, and more. And it's as if they've treated California like the Wuhan lab of far-left extremism. They've been experimenting. They've run this experiment. They've been cooking up this ideological virus, and they've sent it out. It's leaked and infected us here and gone beyond California. So I wanted to understand what it was. What is this experiment that's failed so spectacularly? And so I break it down in the book. And I'm a structured and orderly person, so I wanted all of them to end with an ism. You'll see there are 9 isms. And some of them are familiar. Socialism, we all know what that means, this enormous, big, bloated, bureaucratic government. And some of them are less obvious, but understandable once you think about it. Like, I've touched on it already a couple of times, that it really drives a lot of the problems we see. Climatism. And the word that I use, and I'll just talk about that one a little, because it's such a good example. It's it's beyond an ideology. I call it a pathology, because it's pathological. It doesn't make sense in any kind of normal world. And the climatism is a really good example of it. You look what they're doing on one part of their climate agenda. Energy and fossil fuels. So they, of course, want the war on fossil fuels. Got to end fossil fuels, net zero, whatever, by 2045. No more fossil fuels. How's that going? Here's an amazing number, actually. If you look at the total, and think about what they've done on this, all the pain and nonsense they force down our throats. You know, the banning gas cars and the stoves and the cost of everything and the solar farms everywhere and shutting down our oil and gas industry, destroying communities in Kern County and elsewhere for the crime of producing clean energy better than anywhere else in the world here in California. After all of that, all these years of endlessly going on about climate leadership, world-beating climate action, all this stuff you hear from them, the total proportion of California's energy, if you add it all up, that comes from fossil fuels today is 80%. For the rest of America, it's 81%. So like, what's it all been for? Why are we paying the highest electricity price, the highest gas prices, all this nonsense that we have to deal with? It's barely done anything except cause us pain and make us one of the most unaffordable place to live in the country. And let's go back to the destruction of those communities and our energy industry here in California. I'm going to give you another 80% number. This one's more offensive. So not that long ago, a few decades ago, we produced in California 80% of the oil that we used. And it's important to remember that there are no oil pipelines coming into California. So whatever we don't produce here has to be shipped in. There are no pipelines for oil. And so we used to produce 80%. Here we import 20%. Today, because of their war on fossil fuels that's basically produced no reduction in fossil fuel use, 80% is now imported. That's all it's achieved. Destroying our industry, vandalizing those communities, destroying lives for nothing. And guess where they're importing it from? Iraq, Venezuela, Ecuador. How is it getting here? Giant supertankers, the most polluting form of transportation on the planet, powered by bunker fuel, the dirtiest form of oil. So in the name of climate, they are increasing carbon emissions by shipping it all in, halfway across the world. And here's the final insult, but it shows you they know how ridiculous it is that they passed a bill that requires big companies to take account of the climate impact all the way down their supply chain. Another sort of ridiculous layer of bureaucracy with no purpose at all, just adding cost and hassle to business. With one exception, the supertankers bringing in the oil from Iraq as a result of their stupid climate policies. I'm not making this up. They don't count they start counting the carbon emissions from the supertankers. You were 12 miles off the coast of California. So all the carbon emissions coming halfway around the world, they ignore to make it work somehow. It's so insane. It's not that's why I say it's pathological. The only reason for doing this is to make them think that they're taking action. And that's why another chapter in this book and another example of their pathologies is narcissism. Narcissism, to make themselves feel good at our expense. Elitism is the first chapter, because you look at the impact of their policies. Who's really hurt by their policies? Working people, working class people in California. They're the ones that are hurt by this ridiculous taxes and costs and fees and bureaucracy. And the rise in unemployment. It's shameful that California, for most of last year, had the highest unemployment in the country. It's unbelievable, actually. So that's what's gone wrong. But I just want to end by talking about how we turn things around. But before that, why? Why is it so important? There's a line right at the beginning, which I feel so deeply, and I feel so personally. So years ago, some of you may have heard me tell the story before, even before we moved here, I was in love with California. The idea of California, the ideal of California. To me, it represented everything beautiful and magnificent in the world. The best place on earth. Everything that I admired and respected and felt energized by. Energy, and ambition and optimism and hustle and innovation, and also that rebel spirit. That's why this ridiculous nanny state bureaucracy telling us what to do every minute of every day, what car to drive, how to cook your food, how to raise your kids, where to live. That's not California. That's the opposite of California. We're the home of doers and dreamers and creators and builders and people who just want to do their own thing and live their life the way that they choose. That's California. That's what inspired me. And so the line at the beginning of the book, I think, is so important for us to understand. California means to America what America means to the world. If America represents the best of everything, the best nation anywhere, of course we all believe that. We know that. California should be the best of America, not the worst. That's what we've got to get back to. That's why it's so important. And so you'll find the second part of this book, part 2 of Califailure, is called Califuture. And it's the answer, the antidote to the virus of leftism, all these ideological extremes. And the answer is to not be ideological. When you read through part 2 of this book, you'll see that the answers are not complicated. They're not complicated. We just have to get back to positive, practical ideas. Restore the California dream of home ownership by ending this ridiculous war on single-family homes. Allow our builders to build, get rid of these environmental regulations, the building codes that change every year, making everything so expensive. Open up space for building. We don't need to have this ideological obsession with everyone living in apartments. That's not how people want to live in California. The California dream of home ownership. End the bureaucratic war on business, especially small business. I mean, the stories in this book, I'll just give you a couple. A owner of a winery I met, she tried to get a permit to expand. She was allowed 30 visitors a day. And she built the new patio, expanded the patio, wanted to apply for 50 per day. It took her 6 years and $1 million in fees and consultants and whatever, because you have to hire the consultant to do the environmental thing, and then they have to hire a consultant to go through your application, and you have to pay for their consultant, and then someone sues the consultant, you have to get a different lawyer, on and on like this. 6 years. That's typical. You hear stories like this the whole time. I've got to do the because we're in Orange County. I've got to do the Santa Ana Mexican restaurant. I'm sure you've heard this before. Have you? I don't know. I'll tell the story, and then I'll wrap up so we can have some questions. So there's a Mexican restaurant in Santa Ana, and they don't do dinner, so it's a brunch and lunch, and we're talking about all the litigation, the stupid lawsuits they have to deal with. Pagel. Anyone who runs a business, you'll know Pagel. I used to run restaurants. That's why I'm really obsessed with the restaurant business. You're at the sharp end of all this nonsense, and so I always like to talk to restaurant owners and bar owners because what they're dealing with. Anyway, this one I hadn't heard before. He was telling me the usual lawsuits about, the disabled parking space in the wrong color blue, so he gets sued over that. And then, it's true. I mean, it's insane. But this one I had never heard before. He said, also, we had the gender discrimination lawsuit. I said, gender discrimination? What's that about? Something to do with the chef? I don't know. No, it was the menu. The menu. Well, they do brunch. They had a section, this is a true story, they had a section on the menu with the egg dishes. And the title was Los Huevos, the eggs. Gender discrimination, because I said, what do they mean? They said they wanted it to be non-binary. Non-binary. I said, but that is what it is in Spanish, Los Huevos, the egg. They said, yeah, I know, but it should be, it's gender. Okay, what did they want it to say? Les huevos, L-E-S. I said, but that's not a thing. Not like less, L-E-S. I said, but that's not a thing. Doesn't matter. Lawsuit, to make it go away, 65 grand. I mean, and this is what our business owners are dealing with. So you just got to stop that stuff. And so it's not complicated what we have to do. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, and maybe in some of the questions we can talk about how we get there, but the antidote to Califailure is common sense, practical policies, if I may say so, as exemplified by Tony Strickland and his team in Huntington Beach, who very quickly took action to clean up the homeless encampments and prosecute crime and deal with the ideological nonsense in the libraries and get voter ID passed through a ballot initiative before they sued him, and that's a good fight that we're in right now. So it's all in here. I'm not going to go through it. We can talk about it, but I just want to end with this to say why this matters. It matters because California does represent the absolute best of everything there is. I mean, if we are no longer an inspiration to the world has really lost something special. When people think of the American dream, they thought of California. And that's what we need to get back to. And we can. And that's why it's so very important that we understand what's gone wrong, that we have a plan to fix it, but above all, that we stand together and we fight for California. That's how we'll save California. We'll make the California dream a reality again for everyone and make this beautiful state that we love so much truly golden again. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to do that.
Mr. Hilton, thank you very much. We're going to get right into questions. I know there's going to be a ton of hands going up. Raise them. I will come to as many as we can. Our first question.
Hey, Steve. So we need to make the state great again. So my question is, when are you going to run for governor?
Oh, dear. When are you going to run for governor? Okay, so I will give you a very direct answer, as direct as I can. So first of all, let me say, yes, it is true. I'm very seriously considering running for governor of California in 2026. That is true. What do we think? You like that idea? Good. No groans. Very good. I like it. And seriously, I was asked this earlier, and I'm not, trying to avoid the question. I'm just merely conveying to you that is a very serious decision, and one that I take very seriously. And the only way that I would want to do it is to know that we would be in a position to win, and win convincingly, so we can start the process of saving this beautiful state. And so there's a lot of work to do to put all that in place. I've been doing that work for a couple of years now. It's very close to completion. And so I'll end in terms of the question about the timing. So, here we go. Kamala Harris has told us that she's also considering running for governor of California, and that no, I don't agree. By the way, I don't agree with that. I say bring it on. I say fantastic. Let's beat her again. I think we will. So she's told us that she will make a decision by the end of the summer. I can tell you tonight, I will be making my decision and letting you know what it is very loudly, much sooner than that. Thank you.
Next one to your left, sir.
Is there any similarity between the Labor government and the Democratic Party of California?
The Labor, okay, interesting. So one of the things that I admired about America from afar before moving here was the fact that it seemed that there was a time when, and we didn't have this in the UK until Tony Blair came along, who really genuinely changed the Labour Party and brought it back to the centre a little bit. But unlike in the UK, we thought, you had in America two parties who argued over the details of policy, but fundamentally agreed about the capitalist system and the role of government and so on, basically. With, adjustments here, a bit more spending, a bit more taxes, but basically agreeing about capitalism. That's gone now. And I would say that the Democratic Party of California is much more left-wing than the Labour Party in the UK. Much more left-wing. And you have right now Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister, is easily the most left-wing leader of the Labour Party since, the early 80s. There's been a more left-wing leader, the most left-wing Prime Minister since the 70s. And so it's interesting to me, however, that actually you look at how far left they are. I mean, what I itemize in this book, it's really extreme. And so I think the comparison now is the other way. And you look at what's gone on here in California in particular, as I said, and this has infected the rest of the country. So a lot of this stuff you see is what's going on. And there's a very important point there, because if you look at what's going on with the Democratic Party today and their reflection, if you can call it that, on their election defeat here, look where the energy is in the Democratic Party. Look, AOC and Bernie, and they're saying, well, that's the future of the Democratic Party. And I say to a national audience, I was saying it last week, yeah, we don't need to imagine what that looks like. That's what we've been living under here. The AOC Bernie agenda is basically what's been implemented in California. And look at the results, a total failure. It's very important to convey that message as they continue to go down that left-wing path.
Center of the room, sir.
Hi. I was wondering, I don't know if you mentioned anything about it in the book, but what are your thoughts on this jungle primary that we have?
Well, okay. So there's a lot wrong with the political system here in California. They've fiddled around with it in all sorts of ways that have undermined confidence in the system. And the top two primary system is a good example of that. So the original intent was to make the incentives for candidates to be more moderate. That was the idea. Well, how's that working out? I mean, it's just gone further and further left ever since it came in. So it's clearly not working along the lines that it was intended. But actually, when you look at all the problems in the political system in California, the truth is, I wouldn't put that at the top of the list. It does occasionally throw out ridiculous outcomes like 2 Democrats in the general election and so on, which is completely disenfranchising people. But actually, look at all the other problems. I mean, we've talked briefly about voter ID. You know, when you have that combination of mass mailing in of ballots, universal mail-in, and ballot harvesting, where a union activist, I mean, it's supposed to be one person, one vote, not one union activist, 7,000 votes. You know, it's unbelievable. So you've got that to deal with. The extraordinary long period. I mean, why can't we? Other places seem to manage it pretty simply. You know, vote on one day, count on one day, get the results on one day. I don't know why we can't do that here. And there's another thing I'd add to the list, very important, and it's part of how we got to the one-party rule, actually, which is the gerrymandering of the districts. So in 2008, there was a ballot initiative passed on what they called independent redistricting. I wasn't here, so don't blame me, it's your fault. You all voted for this. So independent redistricting, take the power to shape the districts away from the legislature, put it to an independent commission, equal representation, whatever. That's been totally hijacked by the Democrats, totally hijacked, both in terms of how it operates. You see, this is what they're good at, like going back to the example about the paths to whatever. They're good at this bureaucratic process. So they took control of the process. They added this new criteria for drawing up districts, communities of interest that allowed them to gerrymander. And here's how you know it's gerrymandered. And I think this, in a way, this is the most serious thing we need to fix. This is a much more Republican state than people think. So the way you hear people talk about it, it's like 80-20, Democrat, Republican. Exactly, it's not that at all. So even in a bad year, with a candidate with not much money and not much name recognition, whatever, you get at least over 40%. The average share of the vote for Republican candidates in statewide elections since the last time a Republican won statewide, which was 2006, Arnold's re-election, the average share of the vote is 41.7%. It's not 50, but it's not 20. But you look at the legislature, the Assembly and the Senate, I mean, until this election just now, where we did a little bit better, it was 20%. That was the representation in terms of the seat. 20 out of 80 no, it's less. It was 18, wasn't it? 18, and now it's 20. But 20% representation for 40% support because of the gerrymandering. If we had fair representation for Republican votes in the state legislature, they wouldn't have a supermajority that could ram through any legislation that they want. The budget, and so that's another thing we have to fix. So there's all these things. And in terms of the hierarchy and the prioritization, I agree with you on the top two, but I think it would actually be lower on the list than some of these other things.
From the front of the room.
Hi, Steve. Our daughter was a volleyball player, and she played at a high school in Orange County, and then she played at USC, right on, and then she played professional volleyball in Europe. As governor, how would you be able to keep men out of women's sports?
First of all, it's so lovely to see you. If you don't know Nicole, she's the greatest fighter I know. We love you, Nicole. Thank you so much. You look amazing, and we're greatly excited to see you here tonight. Thank you. So this, it's amazing. I just got to say, I'm good, yes. I feel like I can't say the name. I'm not just doing this for effect, but Gavin Newsom. So he addressed this issue. Of course, they told Charlie, a good friend of mine, Charlie Kirk. By the way, very important point. Charlie is all in on helping us flip California in 2026. That's going to be a big deal. So he has Charlie on the podcast, his new podcast, First Guest, and he says he thinks it's deeply unfair, that's the quote, deeply unfair for biological men to compete in women's sports. Great, finally you've seen common sense. So what are you going to do about it? You're the actual governor. What are you going to do? And of course, we've had the legislation, just this week, the legislation in the state legislature, Republican bills to do exactly what you're asking for. So of course you'd expect this man who just a couple of weeks ago thought that this was deeply unfair would weigh in to get these bills across the finish line, which were delivering what he... That one, very good. Okay. Oh, did anyone watch Jimmy Fallon's show on Saturday night on Fox News? I was on for the first time this week. It was good, wasn't it? Anyway, we had to think of jobs for these Democrats in hospitality. I had to sort of think of something. So we had Gavin, what's he going to do in a Hotel California? That's right. I said, well, Kamala would be working the salad bar. Anyway, sorry, I'll answer your question. So the thing is that this is amazing to me. He was asked why he didn't weigh in to actually implement or try and implement what he said he thought to Charlie. And he said, well, we've been working on it for 2 years, and we wrestle with it, and we've been looking at it, but we haven't found a way to make it fair. I said, it's not complicated. Don't let biological men compete in girls' sports. Like, why does it take 2 years to fail to come up with an answer? It's just unbelievable. So, but the question, to your point, well, there's a lot of pressure coming from the federal government. And by the way, this is a really important dynamic in 2026. Wouldn't it be great to have leadership in California to be a partner for President Trump and his administration instead of constantly frustrating them and working against them? So I think that's something. Some of it is legislative. I mean, it's the 2013 bill. To be fair, it was Jerry Brown. And so these Republican bills would have addressed it. Maybe we ask Tony what he's going to do about it. But the point is, if we don't address the legislature point and the gerrymander, you're not going to pass bills, so you have to find another way. You can use federal action, you can use the leverage the Trump administration's doing, but you have to deal with it because it is totally unfair. We just cannot have this continue.
Our next question.
Stephen, last time I saw you,
Yeah, great.
we had a nice conversation, and you know, you're from Northern California. I'm not going to hold that against you. You have a flip phone.
Yes.
Yes, you have a flip phone You gonna pull that out and show us?
Jimmy Fallon made me do it.
Yes,
so I did on
I am
Saturday,
failing
exactly.
you. Yes.
Yes, here we are.
Yes,
So this is my phone. Shall I do the joke?
please.
So this is the phone with which we will flip California. How about that?
That is our fearless leader. So I'm so glad, when I saw you last, I said it was so great to have you as one of our greatest imports. But I'm glad we got you before the tariffs.
Yeah, I don't know what would have been slapped on me. I don't know. 25%.
But give us a little different side of you right now and endear us a bit and tell us about your Olympic father, athlete father, and your parents.
Oh, amazing. What an interesting question. Yes, so my dad was the goalie for the Hungarian national team for hockey. You say hockey, don't you? In England, it's ice hockey. You just say hockey. Yeah, I played in the Olympics. He's a lot older than my mum. It was actually in Garmisch-Partenkirche in 1935. It was the Winter Olympics, the counterpart to the Hitler Games in Berlin, 1936, the Jesse Owens. So he was there, and actually, I remember he died when I was much younger, but I do remember him telling me a story. He always stuck with me, that the team lists, because it was Hitler in charge, and they were going to Germany, and they had to change their names, including his name, because it's anything that sounded Jewish. They had to change the names. Just a little detail that just tells you the insanity of what was going on then. And so he played hockey. He's also, he was very good friends with a lot of the best soccer players in history, like Puskás, for example, if you follow soccer, who ended up playing in Real Madrid. You know, really, so because it's a small country, so they're all friends. So, in fact, they, not that long ago, I was contacted by the Hungarian Hockey Federation, and they wanted me to go and unveil a statue to him outside a hockey arena that they'd named for him. So, but the thing that, always strikes me about that story, and really the journey of my family, I mean, my father, my mother, they met in London, actually. They were working at Heathrow Airport in the restaurant. And my stepfather, who actually, here's an amazing story. Did I do the, who watched the Reagan Library last night? Some of you said you watched it. Who was that? You got this double, so you're embarrassed now. When I was signing the books, they said, oh, we watched on the video. I said, well, so I have to say something different? I hope I did. Anyway, I think I did tell this story. But it's an amazing story. My stepfather was from a village in the western side of Hungary. And he was 14, and it was 1956. The Hungarian Revolution, they fought for their freedom, and then the Soviets came in and invaded, and crushed the revolution. And he's on the far side of the country, a small country, but on the western side, near the border with Austria. And they heard on the radio, he tells the story this way, they just heard that the thing was, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. Jönnek az oroszok in Hungarian. And they said, okay, well, we're going then. If they're coming, we're going. So literally him and his brother and some friends from school, they just ran for the border. Just ran. And they climbed barbed wire fences and it was a properly fortified border. And some of them died. Some of them were killed. Towers and guards and whatever, all that. He made it, his brother made it, a few other friends. Anyway, they ended up in a refugee camp in Austria. And then, fast forward to now, a few years ago, I got to know Arnold Schwarzenegger. When I was working in 10 Downing Street, we did some policy work with him and his team. And I was having dinner at his house in LA, and we got talking about all of this. And he said that when he was a kid, so they lived on the eastern side of Austria, near the Hungarian border. That's where their town was. And he said, we had a Hungarian refugee camp near our town. He said, when I was a kid, my dad we went on bikes. We cycled to the Hungarian refugee camp, and I volunteered there, serving meals to the Hungarian refugees. So I had this amazing thought that perhaps, all those years ago, 1956, you had Governor Schwarzenegger serving meals to my stepfather. I don't know. It's a nice thought. I don't know if it's true.
We have time for one last question, and then after this question, he has agreed to sign all of your books. We'll do that in the front lobby. So would you close us out? What is your question?
Okay.
We've got trouble. This is the ex-Brit.
Well, I
Just
was
watch
about
out.
to say that.
I
You
know.
stole my line. I'm curious. I know why I came here, which was totally different from your reason. You haven't addressed why you decided to leave England to come here.
Oh, okay.
And you clearly had a big career in front of you in England. And maybe you could have done even more good there than here.
Oh,
Or
I don't
maybe
know about that.
ultimately you can actually influence politics in both of our countries.
Well, I don't know about that. I'll tell you the very brief answer to the question about why we're here. It was very simple. Family. It was a family. The family is the most important thing in my life. I think it should be the most important thing in all our lives and in political life. That's what we should prioritize. That's what I prioritized. And actually, it was back in 2012. My wife at the time was. Sorry, I always get this wrong. She's still my wife. At the time, my wife was working for a big tech company. She was doing a lot of commuting to the Bay Area. I was senior advisor in 10 Downing Street. When our second son was born, it was just a lot. You know, the traveling and the time difference, and she was up late, not getting to see. So it just felt, you know, a lot. So we decided to move for that reason, we didn't actually intend to be here forever. It was just see how it goes, just for a bit. And then, that's 2012. And I do remember very clearly in 2016, I went back to the UK to campaign for Brexit. Do you remember the Brexit referendum? Which I felt very strongly about. I'd argued for leaving the EU. It was a complete nightmare. This is not the time to go into a whole long policy discussion of the EU. Anyway, I went there, a couple of weeks, came back. It was fun. I flew back. In fact, I was I'll just tell this very quickly. I was on air for the BBC. They made me do the late night thing because I was flying back the next day because we'd booked an RV to do an RV trip up north. We were going up to Mendocino and Shasta, all around there. Lassen Volcanic. If you've ever been to Lassen, it's amazing. It's beautiful. Anyway, well, the whole state's beautiful, but so I had to get back anyway, so I thought, well, I'll sleep on the plane. And we landed at San Francisco, just me, just me. And I just really remember this, looking, as we're taxiing into the airport, to the terminal, just looking out the window and the hills there, and I just remember thinking, oh, it's so great to be home. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, home. You know, this is now, and actually, it really is home. Not just in a literal sense that this is where we've made our home and raised our family, and I've started a company and taught at Stanford and done all these amazing things, but just, you know, emotionally, spiritually, actually, this is home. I feel at home here and connected to this place and what it represents in a way I never have anywhere else. Very, very proud to be here, and that's why I feel actually I feel like actually if you've had the opportunity to learn about these things, and the experience to work in the government and do policy and make arguments in the media and do a startup, all these things that I've had the opportunity to do, I think if they give you the opportunity to actually then try and do something to make this a better place, this place that's given me so much, I think you have an obligation, a responsibility to do that. So that's what I'm doing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Hilton, thank you, sir. He will be in our front lobby to sign copies of your book. We'll see you up there shortly. Thank you for coming tonight.